People are deeply scripted in what I call the scarcity mentality. They see life as having only so much, as though there were only one pie out there. And if someone were to get a big piece of the pie, it would mean less for everybody else. The scarcity mentality is the zero sum paradigm of life. People with a scarcity mentality have a very difficult time sharing recognition and created power of profit. Even with those who help in the production, they also have a very hard time being generally happy for the success of the pupil, even and sometimes especially members of their own family or close friends and associates. It almost as if something is being taken from them when someone else receives special recognition or windfall gain or has remarkable success or achievement. Although they might verbally express happiness for others' success, inwardly they are eating their hearts out. Their sense of worth comes from being compared and someone else's success to some degrees means their failures. Only so many people can be a student. Only one person can be number one. To win simply means to beat. Often, people with a scarcity mentality harbor secret hopes that others might suffer misfortune, not terrible misfortune, but acceptable misfortune that would keep them in their place. They are always comparing, always competing. They give their energies to possessing things or other pupils in order to increase their sense of worth. They want other people to be the way they want them to be. They often want to clone them and they surrounded themselves with yes people who won't challenge them, people who are weaker than they. It's difficult for people with a scarcity mentality to be member of a complementary team. They look on difference as signs of insubordination and disloyalty. The abundance mentality, on the other hand, flows out of a deep inner sense of personal worth and security. It's a paradigm that there is a plenty out there, enough to space for everybody. It results in sharing of prestige or recognition of profit, of decision making. It opens possibility, options, alternatives, and creativity. The abundance mentality takes the personal joy, satisfaction, and fulfillment of habit 1, 2, and 3 and turns it outwards appreciation, the uniqueness, the inner direction of proactive nurture nature of other. It recognizes the unlimited possibilities of our positive interactive growth and development, creating new third alternative public victories. That does not mean victory over other people. It means success and effective interaction that brings mutually beneficial results to everyone involved. Public victory means working together, uniting together, making things happen together that even the same people couldn't make happen by working independently. And public victory is a outgrowth of the abundance mentality. Paradigms are character rich in integrity, maturity, and abundance mentality has a geniusness that goes far beyond technique or lack of it in human interaction. One thing I have found particularly helpful to win lose people in developing a win-win character is to associate with some model or mentor who really thinks win-win. When people are deeply scripted in win-lose or other philosophies and regularly associates with other who are likeness scripted, they don't have much opportunities to see and experience the win-win philosophy in action. So I recommend reading literature such as this inspiring biography of Anwar Sahadat in search of identity, and seeing movies like Chariots of Fire or Play like less miserable that expose you to models of win-win. But remember, if we search deeply enough within ourselves, beyond the scripting, beyond the learned all attitudes and behavior, the real validation of win-win as well as very every other correct principles is in our own lives. Relationship. From the foundation of character, we build and maintain win-win relationship. The trust, the emotional bank account is the essence of win-win. Without trust, the best we can do is compromise. Without trust, we lack the credibility for open mutual learning and communication and real creativity. But if our emotional bank account is high, credibility is no longer an issue. Enough deposits have been made so that you know and I know that we deeply respect each other. We focus on the issues, not on personalities or positions. Because we trust each other, we are open. We put our cards on the table, even though we see things differently. I know that you are willing to listen with respect while I describe the young woman to you, and you know that I'll treat your description, the old woman, with the same respect. We both are committed to try to understand each other point of view deeply and to work together for the third alternative, the synergistic solution that will be better answer for both of us. A relationship where bank account are high and both parties are deeply committed to win-win is the ideal springboard for tremendous synergy. Habit 6, that relationships neither makes the issue any less real or important, nor eliminated the difference in perspective, but it does not eliminate the negative energy. Normally focus on difference in personality and position and creates a positive corporative energy. Focus on truly understanding the issue and resolving them in a mutual benef- beneficial way. But what if that kind of relationship isn't there? What if you have to work out an agreement with someone who hasn't even heard of win win and is deeply scripted in win lose or some other philosophies? Dealing with win lose is the real task of win win. Rarely is win win easily achieved in any circumstance. Deep issues and fundamental difference have to be dealt with, but it is much easier when both parties are aware of and committed to it, and where there is a high emotional bank account in the relationship. When you are dealing with a person who is coming from a paradigm of win lose, the relationship is still the key. The place of focus is on your circle of influence. You make deposit into emotional bank account through a genuine courtesy, respect, and appreciation for that person and for the other point of view. You stay longer in the communication process. You listen more. You listen in greater depth of your. You express yourself with greater courage. You aren't reactive. You go deeper inside yourself for a strand of character to be proactive. You keep hammering it until the other person begins to realize that you genuinely want the resolution to be a real win for both of you. That very process is a tremendous deposit in the emotional bank account. And the stronger you are, the more genuine your character, the higher your level of proactivity, the more committed you really are to win win, the more powerful your influence will be with that other person. This is the real test of interpersonal leadership. It goes beyond transactional leadership into transformational leadership. Transforming the ideal involve well as the relationship, because win-win is a principle people can validate in their own life. You will be able to bring most people to a realization that they will win more of what they want by going for what you both want. Think win win. So remember that no deal is always an option, or you may occasionally choose to go for the low form of win win compromise. It is important to realize that not all decisions need to be win-win, even when the emotional bank account is high. Again, the key is the relationship. If you and I work together, for example, and you were to come to me and say, Stephen, I know you won't like the decision. I don't have time to explain it to you. It let alone get you involved. There's a good possibility you'll think it's wrong, but you will support it. If you had a positive emotional bank account with me, of course, I support it. I hope you were right and I was wrong. I work to make your decision work. But if the emotional bank account weren't there and if I were reactive, I wouldn't really support it. I might say I would do your face, but behind your back, I wouldn't be very enthusiastic. I wouldn't make the investment necessary to make it succeed. I didn't work. I've say, so what do you want me to do now? If I were overreactive, I might even torpedo your decision and do what I could make sure others did too, or I might become maliciously obedient and exactly and only what you tell me to do, accepting no responsibility for result. During the 5 years I live in Great Britain, I saw the country brought twice to its knees because the train conductors were maliciously obedient in following all the rules and procedures written on papers. An agreement means very little in letter without the character and relationship base to sustain it in spirit. So we need to approach win-win for genuine desire to invest in the relationship to make it possible. Agreement. From relationship flows the agreement that give definition and direction to win-win. They are sometimes called performance agreement or partnership agreement or shifting the paradigms of productive interaction from vertical to horizontal, from hovering supervision to self supervision, and from positioning to being partners in success. Win win agreements cover the wide scopes of interdependence interaction. We discuss one important application when we talk about delegation in the green and clean story in the habit 3. The same five elements we listed there provide the structure for win-win agreement between the employers and employees, between independent people working together on projects, between groups of people cooperatively focus on a common objective, between companies and suppliers, between any people who need to interact to accomplish. They create an effective way to clarify and manage expectation between people involved in any interdependent endeavor. Desired results, not matters. Identify what is to be done and when. Generally specify the parameters, principles, policies, etc., within which results are to be accomplished. Resources identify human, financial, technical, and organizational support available to help accomplish the results. Accountability set up the standards of performance and time of evaluation. Consequences specify good and bad, natural and logical. What does and will happen as a result of the evolution? These five elements give win-win agreement a life of their own. A clear mutual understanding and agreement upfront in these areas creates a standard against which people can measure their own success. Traditional authorization supervision is a win-lose paradigm. Is also the result of an overdrawn emotional bank account. If you don't have trust or common vision of desired result, you tend you tend to hover over, check up on, and direct. Trust isn't there, so you feel as though you have to control people. But if the trust account is high, what is your method? Get out of their way. As long as you have an upfront win-win agreement and they know exactly what is expected. Your role is to be source of help and to receive their accountability report. It is much more ennobling to the human spirit to let people judge themselves than to judge them. And in a high trust culture, it's much more accurate. In many cases, people know in their hearts how things are going much better than the records show. This discernment is often far more accurate than either observation or measurement. Win-win management training. Several years ago, I was indirectly involved in a consulting project with a very large banking institution that had scores of branches. They wanted us to evaluate and improve their management training program, which was supported by an annual budget of $750,000. The program involves selecting college students and putting them through 22-week assignment in various departments over a 6 month period of time so that they could get a several sense of the industry. They spent 2 weeks in commercial loans, 2 weeks in industrial loans, 2 weeks in marketing, 2 weeks in operation, and so forth. At the end of the 6 month period, they were assigned as assigned assistant managers in the various branch bank. Our assignment was to evaluate the 6 month formal training period. As we begin, we discuss that the most difficult part of the assignment was to get a clear picture of the desired result. We asked the top executive the key hard questions. What should these people be able to do when they finish the program? And the answer we got were vague and often contradictory. The training program dealt with methods and not results, so we suggested that they set up a pilot training program based on a different paradigms called learner controller instruction. This was a win-win agreement that involves identifying a specific objective and criteria that would demonstrate their accomplishment and identifying the guidelines, resources, accountability, and consequences that would result when the objective were met. The consequences in this case were promotion to assistant manager, where they would receive the on-the-job part of their training and a significant increase in salary. We had to really press to get the objective hammered out, that this is what is it you want them to understand about accounting, what about marketing, what about real estate loans, and we went down the list. They finally came up with over 100 objectives, which we simplified, reduced, and consolidated until we came down to 39 specific behavioral objectives with criteria attached to them. The trainees were highly motivated by both the opportunities and the increased salary to meet the criteria as soon as possible. There was a big win in it for them, and there was also a big win for the company because they would have assistant branch manager who met result oriented criteria instead of just showing up for 12 different activity trap. So we explained the difference between learner control and interaction and system control instruction to the trainees. We basically said, here are the objective and criteria, here are the resources including learning from each other, so go to it. As soon as you met the criteria, you will be promoted to assistant manager. There were finished in 3.5 weeks. Shifting the training paradigms had released unbelievable motivational and creativity. As with many paradigm shifts, there was resistance. Almost all of top executives simply wouldn't behave it when they were shown the evidence that the criteria had been met. They basically said that these trainees don't have the experience, they lack the seasoning necessary to give them the kind of judgment we want them to have as assistant branch manager. In talking with them later, we found that what many of them were really saying was, we want through goat week. How come these guys don't have to? But of course, they couldn't put it that way. The leg seasoning was a much more acceptable expressions. In addition, for obvious reason, including the $750,000 budget for a 6 month program, the personal department was upset. So we responded, fair enough, let's develop some more objective and attach criteria to them, but let's stay with the paradigms of learner control instruction. We hammered out 8 more objective with very tough criteria in order to give the executive the assurance that the company were adequately prepared to be assistant branch manager and continue the on the job part of the training program. After participating in some of the season where these criteria were developed, several of the executive remarked that if the trainee could met these tough criteria, they would be better prepared than almost any who had gone through the 6 month program. We had prepared the trainees to expect resistance. We took the additional objective and criteria back to them and said, just as we expected, management wants you to accomplish some additional objective with even tougher criteria than before. They have assured us this time that if you met these criteria, they will make you assistant manager. They went to work in unbelievable ways. They went to the executive in departments such as accountant and basically said, "Sir, I am a member of this new pilot program called Learner Control Instruction, and it is my understanding that you participate in developing the objective and the criteria. I have six criteria to meet in this particular department. I was able to pass three of them off with the skills I gained in college. I was able to get another one out of a book. I learned the fifth one from Tom and the fellow you trained last week. I only have one criterion left to meet, and I wonder if you or someone else in the department might be able to spend a few hours with me to show me how. So they spend a half a day in a department instead of 2 weeks."